And welcome back to Dark Side of the Ring Unheard, the podcast from the hit Vice TV series that takes us deep into the archives of hundreds of hours of interviews that Dark Side has conducted with some of professional wrestling's least heralded, its villains, its heroes, and so much more. Jack Encarnacio, JP Sorrow from the Lapsed Fan Wrestling Podcast, joined, of course, as always, by Evan Husney, the co-creator and executive producer of Dark Side of the Ring. Dark Side Season 6 resumes Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Vice TV, where they look at Shannon Spruill, known as Daphne in WCW in the late 90s, and later TNA Wrestling. She of course, memorable for her shrieking goth girl character, and unfortunately her tragic suicide. The unique challenges faced by women are sort of part of what we'll be talking about on this episode.
In wrestling,
of Unheard. You think about Elizabeth, you think about Luna, you think about Sherry.
Yep.
Who you guys have covered on Dark Side seasons past. And today on Unheard, we're going to look at some unaired clips from one Missy Hyatt, who sat for Dark Side cameras for both episodes on Buff Bagwell and Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
That's right.
Two wrestlers who you profiled in season 5, who are well known to her in her travels in the wrestling industry. And much like Daphne, Missy was someone who wasn't training to be a pro wrestler herself.
That's right.
She wasn't looking to be in the ring, but she, by virtue of being sort of like a tangential figure, a valet, a manager type, was thrust into the physicality of the wrestling business.
Yeah, I mean, Daphne grew up as, I didn't know this before doing the episode this season on her, but that she grew up as a child actress. I mean, she was in films.
We did an episode of Under the Cinemat because of her. She was in the Santa Claus the movie back in 1985. And
that's right.
We dug into her. It's such a sad story, but she's amazing.
Yeah, she was in Santa Claus, and she was also in, for any cinephiles listening to this, she was also in Nicholas Roeg's Insignificance, which is crazy if you know that movie. But anyway, so she kind of grew up in the entertainment industry at a very young age. And it was, I believe, towards the end of WCW's run in the early the year 2000, she had sort of auditioned for this role for them, where she was going to play this sort of like crazy goth valet to David Flair.
Yeah, Ric Flair's son, oldest son.
Yep, and she gets the part, so to speak, to be in wrestling. And it's very similar to Missy Hyatt's story as somebody who would get into the wrestling business, and then that slowly snowballed into taking bumps and, learning how to, do some moves and get physical in the ring. And then now you're just married to this business forever, and you can't get out of it. And once it has its claws in you, and, and of course you develop a deep passion and love, and you sort of find, this love for wrestling, but it's a business that's very hard to get out of once you get into it.
It's kind of, I definitely equate it to an addiction at times. Sometimes it really has that, where you need to have a long time away when you get out, where you're not, because so few people really have that successful transition out of it. You need to be gone for a long time, really detox yourself before you can move on. And it's sad, really, that it becomes like that.
Well, there is this thing, too, I think, for a lot of performers, when they get that first hit of being out in front of a crowd, in that type of crowd, feeling the energy and feeling the power of being able to command people's emotions and how they feel, and, the adulation and the, all that stuff, I think is something that is very hard to walk away from.
Totally.
Once you've experienced it for the first time.
Yeah.
And
especially
so I think,
when the wrestling business is always dangling just one more payday in front of you. It's not always a long-term opportunity. There's a little something else, little something else, little something else.
It's a little hit here. It's all you need. Just one little hit.
Yeah. And I go back to something I remember Jake Roberts telling us, I think in season 1, he was talking about when he came out to the ring with Alice Cooper. It was WrestleMania 3. Yes. And Alice Cooper, a guy not a stranger at all to playing in front of sold out crowds and in arenas all over the country, but him coming out to the ring in that little ring cart that they both rode out to the to the match, just 90,000 or however many people were in the building, whatever. But the feeling of that many people coming unglued and the reaction of it, basically he couldn't believe it. He had never experienced anything like that. And we're talking about a rock and roll singer here.
Yeah.
So I think the power of being in front of an audience, that sort of live, without a net, so to speak, is
also
very powerful.
It's a feeling of acceptance, a feeling of love.
That's true too.
I mean, we talk about it all the time, how there are these so many wrestlers come from a background where they didn't have that. They didn't have a connection or love or something like that, and being accepted. And so here you have thousands of strangers who you don't know who are loving you and accepting you. I mean, that can be
rooting for you or booing you,
right? But giving you attention in a way that they want to see you. That can be. It can be very addicting, and it can be equally good but painful too at the same time. It's a lot.
Yes. And Missy Hyatt in some ways kind of unique in that she's got kind of like a grizzled, wizened perspective on this. She kind of was the first wave of, I'm going to call them cat-fighting valets, women who weren't trained to actually compete for championships, but who routinely got in the ring to scratch and claw and fight other women who were supporting other wrestlers, other valets, other girlfriends on girlfriend fights, things like that. She started doing it in World Class, the Dallas territory, vis-a-vis Sunshine, and then she went to the Mid-South / UWF territory and did it with Dark Journey. And in WCW, there was no shortage of time she would go in to protect like the Nasty Boys, who she managed for a time, and get thrown around a little bit. And so she has that unique vantage, kind of continuing on this season of Unheard's theme about what WCW was like before the NWO. We've heard Buff Bagwell and Too Cold Scorpio and Kevin Sullivan, and we'll hear from others talking about this. Missy Hyatt really gives us a unique vantage because at WCW at the time she was there, she was kind of one of the first pin-up attractions in pro wrestling in a lot of ways. And she went to hosting the 900 hotline. We all remember the 900.
Oh, yes, indeed,
buddy.
Anyone get in trouble at home for calling 900 line?
She put the hot and hotline, I'll tell you that.
So she did that. She of course, dated a lot of wrestlers and celebrities, from the Wonder Years' Jason Hervey to NFL quarterback Jim Kelly.
Oh, my.
Oh, shit, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Dabbling in racy photography, and she also wrote a kiss and tell book that a lot of fans passed around aggressively.
JP's favorite book.
In the late 90s. I mean, it's all in there if you want to know who she ran into, let's say, and who ran into her over the years. And but she went through some hard times. She's a survivor in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And a lot of the things she's going to illustrate about the business are underappreciated parts of it that just the male wrestlers or even the female in-ring wrestlers don't really provide. And so she became a keen observer of the ways the business operates. She became almost like an advisor to like a Brutus Beefcake or a Buff Bagwell. She's giving advice on how to get accepted in the locker room, how to conduct yourself politically backstage. There's a lot of that kind of etiquette.
She definitely assimilated all of that through her experience, going head first into this crazy business.
And we'll also get insights into pay disparity, such as it existed as a woman in the business who was a key part of the show and really didn't feel like she was getting paid anywhere near commensurate to her contributions. A lot of nuggets of wisdom here. We'll see. But with Missy, it's interesting because she sat here for the Dark Side cameras, and she's somebody that you guys have always kind of been acquainted with a little bit. What's the history of finally getting Missy to sit down?
I mean, it was just at the time of having the right story that sort of demanded her point of view. I can't remember which one came first because we sort of made season 4 and 5 at the same time. But I think it was for the Buff story and sort of learning that she had a huge hand in essentially discovering him. Which was news to me at the time. And so she was great there. And then, of course, she added so much to the Brutus story as well. So it was great. And she's always been someone that I've followed on social media and seen and observed that she's very much a student of the game.
Yes.
She's still very much invested in wrestling and its history and and learning more about it, seeking out new stuff, and I've always found that to be very fascinating. So
she is a fascinating character out there with a vantage point few had. She was married at a time to Eddie Gilbert when he was booking in pro wrestling.
That's right.
So she got to see the booking side of it very closely and kind of the struggles that entails. But we mentioned her getting thrust into the violence without necessarily having full preparation. It starts with Sunshine in Dallas and continues from there. Here in this clip number 1, Evan, we're going to hear her talk about working stiff, okay, against
Oh, boy.
inexperienced opponents. Because the thing is, when you put someone in there who wasn't necessarily trained in the ring against someone else who wasn't necessarily trained in the ring, they might throw some live rounds and really smack people in the face and have no idea. Like, I got to make this look real. I'm going to really hit this person and see what happens. And for Missy, it was really hard because she didn't really feel like she could complain, even though she had no right to be in these situations.
Oh my God.
So here we go.
All right, let's take a look.
Stiff is when you're really tight in the ring, and when you slam someone, you slam them. Or when you throw them into the turnbuckles, you throw them into the turnbuckles. And when you go to kick them, you don't hold back. You just kick the crap out of them. I know, because for a year, Dark Journey beat the crap out of me every single night. And I would never cry in the dressing room, because if I did, that would be really bad. But I would get in the car and I'd just be bawling, crying because I was so hurt. My thumb's broke. My nose is broke. Oh my God, So yeah, being stiff in the ring is not fun. Not fun, especially when you're working every night.
Imagine having to go back to the car before you can cry that your nose is broken.
Like, you think about the distance in time from when you got kicked and you were, more or less abused in a way.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that she was like abused. Obviously, she knew she was
you caught shrapnel.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You were hurt. You have to, then you go back to the dressing room, then you go, or locker room or whatever, then you get a shower, you get ready, you got to get dressed, then you go, like, we're talking like at least an hour before you can actually like release your emotions. It's awful.
The pain you're feeling.
So awful.
And it does. It brought to mind Daphne in a lot of ways because we saw her. I mean, she leaned in a lot more to taking physical risks and stuff. But here
that's me again. My bad.
This is like the third time today.
I know. I got to walk my dog. Sorry.
Okay.
It's my alarm to walk my dog. I'll forget to do it. And I'll poop in the house.
Kayfabe the Dizhog walk. but yeah, I mean, she ends up taking these risks that are just she has no business taking.
Yes,
Daphne.
Well, yeah, and I think it's because also for Daphne, the time in which she entered the wrestling business, women's wrestling wasn't really what it is today, obviously, and being much more prominent in all the promotions. But there was this weird kind of in between time where we were sort of segueing where there wasn't any women's wrestling really in that sort of late 90s period. Of course, then it would get to the bra and panties era shortly after that with WWE.
Right.
So it's kind of this thing.
She was like, Missy was like in the bra and panties era before the bra and panties era existed.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But for Daphne, it was sort of like, you kind of have to roll with whatever's being asked of you if you want to have a spot or you want to be featured, with respect to WCW or with respect to TNA, who, she would be in part of that later on. And for her, she got into a lot of very physical, and found herself getting injured quite a bit with some crazy moments in the ring. And obviously that would play a huge effect onto her life after wrestling. Yeah. So
and trying to take signals from the wrestlers, like this is how you're supposed to acknowledge you're hurting or not. Right. How you're supposed to hide it in times and tough it through without necessarily being an athlete yourself. Yeah.
And also like this idea of like, Daphne was really maybe ahead of the curve or, trying to go up against the impossible in terms of, if she felt like she got hurt in the ring on the clock at work, she's entitled to a worker's compensation.
Oh, that's also a similarity with Missy as far as
exactly
the HR department stuff.
The HR stuff. And so she filed a claim on one of the major times she was injured in TNA. Yep. And you know what the settlement was? The settlement was, here, just have 1,000 of your action figures and we'll call it even. That's what they
Jesus
did.
Christ.
Better than getting paid with a hot dog like some of these guys.
In wrestling, the HR department is, holy shit, it's real.
Yeah, right.
That's what the HR department is.
No, wrestling is fake,
I thought we were safe. This whole thing's no, especially women in that position. Right. So it's tough in the business for a woman in that way who wasn't, necessarily trained. And she makes it to WCW, does Missy Hyatt here in clip number 2. She describes what it's like to find out where to even get ready. Because the business didn't really make a lot of accommodations for a woman who would be in the locker room and who, couldn't dress with the boys, wasn't exactly a woman wrestler, so wasn't necessarily welcomed in the limited accommodations there would be for the female wrestlers. What did she have to do at Center Stage in Atlanta, where WCW was taping their television at the time? Here, Missy lets us in on that a little bit.
And, I didn't hang out in the dressing room because I always had my own area, sometimes a broom closet. But Yeah, I never got. Dusty would get a room at the center stage, and the heels would have a room, and the baby faces would have a room, and I had the hall, and the ladies' the ladies' bathroom that's for the public. That's what I had.
Oh.
So.
You imagine walking into the ladies' room at a WCW taping and Missy's in there getting ready?
Oh, my God. It's so sad. I mean,
yeah. Well, now you kind of see why Randy Savage was like, we got to find a place for Liz.
Yeah, right.
Because this isn't good, or whatever. Yeah. I can't fucking do it like you can.
But it's true. It's like they just didn't really know how to deal with an entity not know how to deal. They just weren't thoughtful about the unique needs that a character like this might have.
No.
And she also tells an interesting story.
It's just kind of weird though. Like, sorry, just think about it. Like, you got these rooms in these places. I mean, like, you're telling me that they only have 3 spaces available for anybody at any time. Like, it just seems
well. They're probably
awful.
shockingly small. I would imagine for some of these smaller
Everyone
buildings.
used to say center stage was
was really small.
Claustrophobic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been back there, but
it's just thoughtless. Honestly.
Some of the places, like I remember, we went to the Manatee Civic Center when we taped something for Dark Side, and we were there with Chris Jericho, and we went back to where all the guys were changing. And it was just this tiny. It's literally the size of this room.
I'll tell you a funny story. So when I lived in L.A., I did a play in this theater. I would call it a theater. It was really, it was basically, I assume it was a storefront that had been abandoned, but this theater rented it. And it was probably about as big, the whole space. Sure. Lobby was as big as this studio, okay? Yeah. And the backstage area, all right, we're talking probably a 50-seat house. That's how small it was. The backstage area was on stage plywood, and it was like 2 feet wide, basically it. Like, and it just covered this. Like, it was horrifying. So I can appreciate that. I can appreciate having like no place to really.
Can you imagine that, or the locker room you observed, Evan, with the wrestlers in there?
No, I can't.
God.
Missy finding a place in a locker room like
that? You couldn't have fit 2 wrestlers in that backstage area.
No, forget it. Yeah, same. I mean, same. It was miraculous.
Stuff you don't think about necessarily, but she talks about Eddie Gilbert and being married to him, and at a point in time when Buff was breaking in an organization called the Global Wrestling Federation.
Oh, yes.
Remember on ESPN?
Rod Price
was part
Big
of it.
Fan.
It's a long-standing joke on the Laps fan. But it's funny because she had separated from Eddie, but she still had access to his apartment and stuff. And Buff needs a pair of boots because, as we've been talking about, Marcus Bagwell, leans on Missy in some ways for some advice on getting into the business. She gives referrals to him and stuff to promoters.
Yep. And
he gets in the ring, and what do you know? Mark Bagwell is about to lock up with Eddie Gilbert in the GWF ring. And where did he get his boots from? Well, Eddie found out in the throes of combat. Here's clip number 3 as she talks about that moment.
And is this the masked stranger? Is that
he was the handsome stranger.
Handsome stranger.
He wore a mask, but he was the handsome stranger.
Right.
That was
Bagwell's
first gimmick in wrestling. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
I called him up, and I'm like, hey, this is Missy Hyatt. Do me a favor. I'm going to send somebody for you to train them, but don't work them. Don't say, oh, it's $2,500 a month and you got to feed my cats and this, that, and the other. I said, get him in the ring, see if he's got it. If he's got it, train him. If he doesn't, be gentle, be nice. But when someone gets in the ring and they're moving around, whether they've got the timing or not. It doesn't take brain surgery to figure that out.
Because, just to clarify, too, there's a long-standing history, maybe not so much around 1990 or whatever this is, but there is also, there is long documented history of when you would send people to get trained by some of these people, and they would, and if they didn't have it, well, let's just fucking break his arm,
right?
And send him packing so he knows that this is not a bunch of bullshit.
And so he doesn't go out into society and say, yeah, I trained for wrestling. Those guys aren't even tough.
Right.
Like, I didn't make it, but they're not tough. No, this guy's going back into the community with a broken arm or a black eye.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. So that's why she's sort of cautioning, like, don't fuck him up, okay? Because I like this guy.
Yes.
Right? Okay, here we go.
So obviously he had it because he started getting trained. And as a matter of fact, I gave him his first pair of boots and tights.
Uh-oh.
I had gone over to my ex-husband's house because I still had a key, still owned it. And I found a pair in the garage that had never been worn. And I gave him to him. And I think they were either a little too small or a little too big, but they were his first wrestling boots. And wrestling boots are expensive, you know. Back in the 1990s, they were still probably $300, $400, $500. So I gave him his first pair of boots. And
Wait, so Marcus Bagwell's first wrestling boots were Eddie Gilbert's
yes,
boots?
they were. And as a matter of fact, this is the best story. He was working as a handsome stranger in Global because I got him into Global because of Bonnie and Joe. After I saw that he worked, he showed me a tape of him, and I was like, wow, you can really work, you know? I think he was working for Jody Hamilton or something and doing some indies. And so we got him with Global, and they had him as a handsome stranger, and he goes there to work, and he goes to work against Eddie.
Huh.
And they go to lock up in the ring, and Eddie looks down and he goes, you're wearing my boots. And Mark's like, Missy gave them to me. I don't know where she got them. He goes, you're wearing my boots. And Mark's like, I don't know where she got them. She just gave them to me. You know, and Eddie's like, you're wearing my boots. They're not talking about the spot they're about to do or what they're about to do in the match. Eddie's just mad that he's wearing his boots. I don't know. I don't think he ever gave them back to Eddie. But I'm sure Eddie wouldn't have taken them, you know. Just go ahead and keep them, kid, because that's how Eddie was.
Oh man, awkward.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I gotta say,
We were knocking boots, but I mean, to give my boots away.
in 40 years, almost 40 years, I should say, she still has, without a doubt, two of the most piercing blue eyes I've ever seen. Like they literally come through the screen. It's unbelievable.
That was a big thing of her telegenic stuff.
Just watching her here, it's like I can't believe that they still have that kind of effect and they can like zero in on you no matter where you are. It's unbelievable.
We've been talking about the advice that she would give a young buff. Well, when he gets to WCW, she suggests him to Jim Barnett, who of course loved the look of Marcus Alexander
yes.
Bagwell.
My boy.
And in comes Bagwell to Atlanta, and she's giving him some advice. And you know, when we did the Unheard episode on Buff, you remember how he dealt with hazing, I guess you could call it. How he dealt with, you know, people trying to test how much he really wanted to be in the business and how tough he really was. And here in clip number 4, Missy takes us through how she advised Buff to conduct himself in WCW at the time, Marcus Bagwell, and it's kind of an overall kind of.
Sorry, that was me. Sorry.
Yeah, there's all kinds of gimmicks going on here.
Yes,
starting to think that Missy's watching somewhere.
Yeah.
Can you turn that book over, please?
She might have hacked into somebody's phone, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. Turning over the book to whoever's making these noises. But no, she's going to tell us about how she gave advice and how, you know, it's just fascinating that she was in this position to kind of counsel wrestlers, being that she wasn't really a wrestler herself. But here's what it was like to get someone ready to go to work for WCW at that time psychologically.
Okay, here we go.
And he came to me with his first contract, which, by the way, was way more money than I was making.
That'll be a theme.
Oh, that's
a theme. She's very, very close watcher of the ones and zeros.
Should be.
Well,
seriously, given you know what you do. I mean, she wasn't just also like a manager. She did the hosting shit every now and again, and she was.
And she's been in the business for how long at this point? 8 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy. Okay.
It's awful.
Was way more money than I was making. And since I was the lowest paid person there. Anyway, he came to me with his first contract. He said, should I sign it? Should I sign it? I'm like, Mark, what have I told you? Keep your ears shut. I mean, your ears open and your mouth shut. Sign the contract. The next one you get will be bigger if you work out. You know, and I go in there, keep your head down. You're the new guy. You know, I gave him all the stuff
She said if you work out, and he's like, but I do work out. Look at me, I'm fucking huge.
Not what I meant.
No, I know, yeah.
learned from Eddie Gilbert, who burnt every bridge he was ever in, and I gave him what I learned and learned old school way from Michael Hayes and John Tatum and David Manning and Ken Mantell, you know, how to act in the dressing room and dressing room etiquette. I told him how you go around, you shake everybody's hand, you introduce yourself. You know, even you can go up to the big stars and go, hi, you know, my name's Mark, and just introduce yourself, and that's it. Don't ask them for photos or autographs, you know, just, you know, be cool. And he took some of my advice, but some of my advice he didn't. So.
I wonder what advice he didn't take. I can take some guesses.
Oh, the calf implants.
But yeah.
Don't get the calf implants.
Other implants are okay.
Yeah, right.
No.
But you know, it's
Jesus
like
Christ.
it's wild. Like, you can imagine being in this business where like you walk around like constantly horrified that you're going to broach this invisible etiquette that nobody tells you about unless they want to help you.
Well, I mean, think about it. Think about any other job in the world. It's like only in wrestling do you have to, after you get the job, do you have to prove that you really want the job? I'm going to haze you the fuck out of you until I am convinced that you actually want to be here.
It's like, so fucking carny.
It's ridiculous. It's such a joke at times.
Fortunately, you got to wonder, like, if all this is true, like how Mark, who was kind of, prone to put his foot in his mouth sometimes, and talking too loudly when he shouldn't, would have been off to the races in WCW if Missy didn't be like, this is really like something you got to keep in mind.
Right.
I've seen wrestlers flame out thinking that they're able to just, shoot from the hip back there. And
totally.
It's like, Roy, keep your mouth shut. It's amazing how much goes into it. But she also remembers from her earliest days here in clip number 5, it is, a rule of thumb that I thought was just fascinating. I think you already know where this is going. JP, I'll ask you. In the territorial days of wrestling, where, each little region of this country and the world, in fact, had different fan bases, different top attractions, different arenas. It was different in Florida than it was in Dallas, than it was in LA, than it was in Chicago. What do you think was the one consistent way to tell, by looking outside the building before the matches started, that this territory was making a lot of money and was hot or was cold? What do you think was one key tell?
Fans coming into the building?
Yes,
Close.
if you're willing to count heads, but there's something even more telling. Do you know what it is?
No.
Well, Missy is going to tell us. I hope you know what the term rats means.
Oh, boy. Oh, yes. Here we go.
Gotta keep them screaming.
Rats.
Didn't we talk about that last season?
yeah, I think so. You got to keep them.
Gotta keep them screaming.
Rats being a term that they would use for groupies.
Jesus
For
Christ.
women who would show up at the
I'll
matches.
say, not just female, women. I don't think men were called rats. Were they?
No.
Of course not. They were gentlemen. They were ring gentlemen.
Yeah.
for the lady wrestlers.
The guy rats end up at the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
Yeah.
The female
Ring rats.
Right.
The ring rats. These were the girls who would
Jesus
show up and
Christ.
try to catch the guy's attention in the ring and outside the building and try to go to bed with him. Hard stop. That's what it was.
Yep.
And Missy knows all about that. So here's how you knew how good a territory was doing
Brother.
back in her days.
Jesus Christ. All right.
There are some jealous guys, right?
Oh, of course. There's all jealous guys. Jealous guys that some young guy comes along and is just so hot. And the fans loved him. The women loved him.
You're talking about Buff, right?
Correct.
Okay. Sorry.
That's how you could always tell back in the day. Back in the day, in the territory days, you could tell the quality and if they're making money and the houses are drawing by the quality of the arena rats.
Oh, my God.
She doesn't mean the rodents scurrying.
Right. And they're well fed.
Oh, my, well fed.
That's how you could tell where you are in New York.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
Holy
Unbelievable. Okay, here we go.
So,
What's an arena rat?
Yeah.
an arena rat is a term for a groupie. So
if there was like high caliber group.
Oh yes, you could tell when a territory was doing good because you had the beautiful arena rat standing outside waiting for an autograph. So.
Oh, is that what they call it? An autograph?
Yeah.
Autograph something.
Yeah.
And Stu pretending, of course, that he doesn't know what an arena rat is.
Yeah,
Hilarious.
yeah, he knows how to get it out.
I do love that. The follow-up question. Wait, what is that?
Yeah.
So we can get it on camera.
No,
Yeah,
well, no,
yeah.
I mean, of course, but
right.
he knows the president of Vivid Entertainment, but
What a rat. A little bit of tradecraft.
yeah. I love Ribbon Stew this whole season. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
right?
Did he just signed an autograph? Didn't look like an autograph to me. It looked like a room number, but that's neither here nor there. Well, we talk about 900 lines, don't we?
Brother.
Ooh.
Oh man, those were the thing, man.
Oh, yeah.
Those 900 lines, the sex lines you could call.
What was
Oh,
it?
yeah.
What was the Gene Okerlund 1-900
909-9900.
I knew you.
Kids, get your parents' permission.
yeah.
Yeah,
or
right.
don't.
I
before-
want to say, I think you can count on one hand how many kids got their parents' permission before calling.
What he really meant is kids don't say I didn't tell you to get your parents'
Yeah,
permission
exactly.
before
Exactly.
calling. And of course those things were full of all kinds of gossip and
Yep.
rumor mongering, and they would tease you on television and wrestling shows. Like if you call the hotline right now, you'll find out something you're not supposed to know.
Some guy's jumping over from the WWE right now,
right.
Yeah.
as we speak.
And if you paid $3 a minute, and
Oh,
it
my
took you 4
Jesus.
minutes to hear
I
what you
know.
called in to.
I mean, you're right. You had to. It wasn't
What
like you
a
could
scam.
immediately skip these things. You had to wait till the thing was done before you knew which selection you wanted to take. I could talk for 10 minutes before I gave you a selection.
Oh my God.
The
Unbelievable.
WCW is in on this. Just
Are
like
there any
WWF was.
figures or numbers that have been published on how much they made annually on the 900?
You could ask Missy because
Okay.
she was minding those numbers relatively closely,
Really?
as closely as she could, because she, as she's going to talk about, was really one of the big draws of the early WCW 900 hotline, because she would represent herself as kind of like the gossip girl.
Right.
Like she was plugged into who the wrestlers were dating,
Oh.
who was with who.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not sure
Really?
if you
Who was
called-
fooling around on the
Wow, look
road,
at that.
or you know?
Yeah,
right.
yeah, she's like the gossip columnist. You know?
Wow.
That's great,
That's
brilliant.
That's a great play for her.
Yeah.
And, she probably did know a lot more than she ever let on the hotline. But what's important here is she talks about that part of her career and that contribution she made to WCW is sometimes she would send out little shout outs to some of her man friends in the business, among them
Ooh.
Brutus the Barber
Woo!
Beefcake and Leslie, who, of course, played the character of a guy who would cut your hair. He was the barber, right?
My God.
Shears.
Shrub shears.
Garden
shears.
shears.
Garden shears. Thank you.
Shrub,
Thank you.
shrub shears is hard
Shrub
to say.
shears. Hard. Yeah. Garden shears. Yes.
That's right. And so here,
That's the only way to get your hair cut, honestly.
Yes.
So if you called the Missy line here on Clip 6 to try to get some
Clip
insight
6.
into who was betting who or whatever it was she would put out there. I'm not sure if you actually called, by the way, how much she actually told you, but
Right.
she knew, that's for sure. This is how she would get a little shout out to Brutus Beefcake on the 900 line as well, who was with the other company at the time, but she wanted to give a little wink to her friend Brutus, who she'd spent some time with. So the 900 line days, man.
I remember I was doing the 900 hotline for WCW, and I made the remark on the hotline, yeah, I've been in, because I would, everybody would talk about wrestling, and Jim Ross would do the report and the analyzation. Mine was the gossip one. That's why my hotline was the highest rated and made over $500,000 a year.
What the fuck?
I'm sure there is no one who would disagree with that number.
Yeah, right.
Holy
Certainly no accountants in Turner.
crap. I mean,
Dude, you paid, that was a money-making machine.
what's the average, what year is this?
94, 3?
Okay, so what's the average pay-per-view bringing in at that time?
As far as revenue?
Yeah.
Like $1 million, $1.2 million.
So this is like
An extra 500,000 a
that's-
year, though. That's
yeah.
amazing. That's still pretty impressive. Like for nothing, really. Like, what do you,
nothing.
for people dialing numbers in to listen to pre-recorded
No wonder they
shit.
didn't make shirts.
That's why all the wrestling companies had them. It was like such an easy way to make money because
Wow.
people just paid to hear anything.
People were there was no information. Like people were so desperate to get some kind of immediate access to something.
Unreal.
And it took no time. You just laid down a track. And you just, took like, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And you played it. And, people would want wrestling news that they weren't supposed to hear. So a lot of the newsletter writers had 900 lines. I mean, you watch TV back then. Like if you watch
Right.
TV in the middle of the night in the 90s, it's just 900.
All 900 numbers.
That's
Yeah,
true.
absolutely.
Fortune tellers.
Yep,
Remember those?
yep.
Oh yeah.
Everything.
Miss
How
Cleo.
often would they change? How often would they change the message though? Like,
I think
If I-
weekly.
Weekly.
okay, so
I think
Because
we
they want you to call
weekly.
back.
Well, I know that's the thing. Like, I'm wondering, like, if I call Monday, Tuesdays are gonna be a new message. Wednesdays are gonna be a new message. Am I gonna find out more stuff from Missy? Like, what's the deal? So
And as the inside gossip in the business became more greatly distributed through things like newsletters, it's also a way for the companies to kind of clap back at the newsletters to just narrowcast
For
it
sure.
to the
For
kind
sure.
of fan that would actually pay
For
to
sure.
listen. But
For
then
sure.
they could say, we've heard, they would never acknowledge the newsletter, but they'd say, yeah, we've heard reports. This is bogus. We know this because
Wow.
Gene
on
would
the
do it, Mark-
hotline,
Yeah.
I don't mind telling you, fans.
Yep.
Get that long green out.
So there was revenue attached to those
Line
900
those
lines.
coffers.
Wow. All right. Let's see the rest of this.
Because mine was gossip. I would like get the National Enquirer, the Star out and read stuff, and then I would put in wrestlers' names. You know?
total lie.
She's just like making up stuff.
But who
Oh,
cares?
that's amazing.
Oh.
Good for her. Good for her.
Good thing consumer fraud laws don't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Put in wrestlers' names, Like one time I said, call me on the hotline and I'll tell you for the Bruise Cruise, the cruise that they had, call me on the hotline and I'll tell you on the Bruise Cruise who's going to be taking their wife or their girlfriend on, and people would call and pay 99 cents a minute. So That's why even my hotline beat the world champion at the time. I mean, my hotline was, because it was 7 days a week and each person had a day, and my day was Sunday. Cool. And I would only have like 2 15-second clips to plug my Sunday hotline. On the Saturday show, 1 15-second on the Saturday show, 1 15-second on the Sunday show. And, I said, I've been down in Florida getting my hair cut. That was my little homage to Beefcake.
Oh my! Oh, that's funny. Good for her. That's great. I like that shit.
On the distant possibility that there's that one person out there watching this who remembers calling Missy's 900 line and what the hell was that haircut line about? That was a shout out to Brutus Beefcake.
Wow.
Beefcake Barber right there.
Wow.
This is a service we can provide on Unheard. We always talk about this on Lapsed Fan. If they find those recordings and release them, I will pay $600 to listen to them.
Yes, honestly, to have access to any of that stuff, those weekly.
Where would they be? Nowhere, probably. There's probably no archive.
Right. Someone would have had to have kept a tape of all these things, like
there's some freak
box
out there.
I'm sure there's probably somebody who worked at the company who was like, I'm going to fucking take these. No one's going to ever fucking know.
Yeah, there's like recordings that exist of like WCW's internet broadcasts that weren't kept, I don't think, by WCW formally, but some employees just kept, copies of these things.
Wow.
Man, to hear those again.
Oh.
Look, I'm calling it right here.
Early '90s radio WWE ones too, like some of those broadcasts.
Jim Ross kept those.
He kept those.
Those are great.
I'd listen, JR, give him, please. I'll pay a pretty penny for him.
I'm calling it right now. 900 lines are coming back in our lifetime.
You think?
Wow, really?
It's too tempting.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, hey, look, if kids are buying records now,
it'll be a retro thing to do.
It'll be a retro thing. You got to, we should have hotlines. We used to have back in the, in the 90s, like in the dark ages, people had fucking hotlines. So cool.
Hotlines.
It's always been clothes of the past, phones of the future, right?
Sure.
That's right.
Yeah. Jinkos are coming back. Go ahead. They are.
Are they really?
Yes.
Holy shit.
Final's been back for 25 years.
Wow.
Jinkos are like 3 years.
Wow.
Got it.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So here we got clip number, that was clip 6, right?
Yeah.
That was clip 6?
Yeah.
Okay. So she talks about how over time, she got involved, like the photo shoots they did a Missy Hyatt calendar that apparently tell us about it. Go ahead, tell us about it.
I didn't have the calendar, but after the calendar was released, they had a WCW magazine issue that had like some of the outtake photos. Oh my God. It was like, it was one of my favorite. Yeah, pretty much. It was like 93, 94, something like that.
Oh yeah.
I think it was the same issue of the magazine where they listed all of Ric Flair's title wins, including his 2 WWE title wins. In a WCW magazine, they listed him winning the Royal Rumble and beating Savage. Like, it was
bizarre.
Weird. It was so weird.
And this is Missy doing this before Sonny did it in '96.
Oh,
she was
totally.
like the most downloaded AOL.
Listen, like
celebrity.
Missy was amazing. Like, she was like a dream as a kid. I was all about
Down
it.
boy.
No,
Okay.
seriously, I was all about it.
This will actually be clip 8, Evan. So
Okay.
what happens is Missy gets fired from WCW in 1994. This is shortly after Sherry Martel comes in and manages the Nasty Boys.
Oh yeah, right.
Missy Hyatt was managing the Nasty Boys.
Sure.
And there was all kinds of stuff that had happened with Missy. The story's out there if you want to track it down, but essentially there was a blown up photo of her in the CNN headquarters where she almost came out of her top.
Right.
And they kind of isolated that moment. Somebody did and had it pinned up in the office. So it was
Jesus
like grounds
Did
for...
anyone say kayfabe the breast, like Hawk apparently said to her? Kayfabe the breast?
Yeah, that's in her book, right?
It's in her book. It's in her book.
Which means you're about to come out of your top. Pay attention so it doesn't happen.
All right. So
Kayfabe the breast!
Yeah, sounded something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So these gooners at Turner, go ahead.
The Gooners at Turner, have this photo up. This is what she alleged in a lawsuit, like a harassment lawsuit with them. So that's all wrapped up in how she remembers her firing from WCW.
Wow.
But what's significant, and in the episode with Beefcake, she does talk about how when she got fired from WCW, she was so distraught that she thought she was going to jump out of a window.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, that's what she says. And she had a
That's awful.
conversation with Brutus Beefcake that kind of, she says, talked her off the ledge a little bit. Here's a little bit more color from that whole episode and how she felt about how, despite these kind of, you might argue, revolutionary contributions to like what a woman could do on a wrestling TV show and how she could generate revenue, it came to a very depressing, deflating, and kind of like, questionable end for her. This is clip 8.
All right, clip 8. Here we go.
What did he say to you?
he just talked it over to me, and he was just saying Eric Bischoff is an asshole, and
Pause there. Okay, here we go.
And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. My calendar sold more than the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader calendar. Why are they firing me? My hotline makes them this much money, and they only pay me this much money. I'm the lowest paid person there. I go, some other guy, which I won't mention names, does the same job that I do as an announcer and gets paid $250,000 a year more than me. I'm nothing. He's like, well, Eric Bischoff doesn't care about the money. He's personal. He cares. His friendship with Jason Hervey, my ex-boyfriend, was more important. It's more important for Eric Bischoff to suck ass than it is for him to make money.
Whoa.
And he fired me because me and Jason broke up. He doesn't understand that Jason lied to me and did some other things to me that really hurt my feelings, and that's one of the reasons why we broke up. But to him, Jason's probably whining and complaining. And don't.
Where did that one come from? Jesus.
That's a good sound cue.
Yeah, right.
All right, see the rest.
Renew our contract. Don't renew our contract. And I was supposed to get my contract renewed. I was told I was getting it renewed. And a month before my contract was about to expire, and I was getting it renewed for the same amount of money. I wasn't even getting a raise, but I was getting renewed, my contract, and then Bischoff fires me.
That's
fucking unacceptable.
Well, she ends up in that position.
Did
Jesus
she ever?
Christ.
Just remind me, following that, did she ever pursue any?
Yeah,
legal?
she sued him. Yep.
So she did sue them after this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because she was fired is why she sued?
Yeah, well, I'm sure she wouldn't have sued them if she wasn't fired.
Right,
but it had to do more with the photo.
Right.
The sexual harassment component of that.
Right.
That she tried to claim.
So all that's been out there.
Yeah.
What the
I'm sure.
fuck? Like, who does that?
Well, Bischoff said that the reason he fired her was because she was an absolute head case about the fact that he wanted Sherry to manage the Nasty Boys instead of Missy Hyatt. And that just, Sherry shows up and she's freaking out. Why is Sherry here, according to Bischoff? Because that's my spot.
Right.
And so she just sees the situation, the position she had at WCW unravel like any other workplace. It's probably because of personality and not merit.
Right.
And she stands as a indication of that.
But who would? I mean, if this picture thing is true, that's like completely awful.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
The most violating thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's totally unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like, on any level.
Yeah.
Like,
well, the pay disparity too.
That's a whole different thing.
Which is obviously not. That goes back. Not just obviously in wrestling, and probably still happens today.
Still happens today.
Still happens today. But even with Wendy Richter,
sure,
that was a huge sticking point for her. Here she is as the women's champion, or she's on top with
Cyndi Lauper.
With Cyndi Lauper, and she's making a fraction of anybody else, even though she's clearly in a higher position than a lot of the other guys on the card at that point. So. Yeah. It was a shitty time for women in this business.
She was keeping
and in general
track of I'm actually contributing revenue. Like, you can't
yeah,
say
I mean that's also part of it too. I mean, I'm not trying to defend the times and whatever, but it's always this is a constant battle, the equality pay of men and women, but like if you're contributing that much, if you're actually, I mean, I don't know if these numbers are accurate or not, but if you're actually contributing an additional $500,000, that's not chump change. It's not like $1,000 a month. We're talking a lot of money, and the fucking calendar.
Yeah,
come on.
And it's all stuff you can point to. It's not just like she's not just on the show, and it's you can make an argument.
I can argue that these 1,000 fans came from me.
Yeah, right.
No, this is actually hard evidence that she made a significant contribution. It's a fucking shame.
She had some time in ECW, and she continued in the business to some degree, but she soon fell on hard times. You know the story. It's not unlike Sunny's story in a lot of ways in terms of after that pinup success, it becomes difficult. Yeah, well, we'll get to that for sure. Right. Because she eventually gets involved in a project, as we have clip 10 here ready to go.
Oh boy.
Called Wrestling Vixens. What was Wrestling Vixens, boss? I don't know how I don't know that you would know anything about this, but
I had the DVD.
Oh my God!
I will admit that the moment when I must have been young, early 20s, that these were still two of the. I was infatuated with these two wrestling women who was
Missy Hyatt and Sunny.
Missy Hyatt and Sunny.
No shame in your game.
No, and I had it. I bought it. And
what is it? I don't even know what it is.
It's a weird video. Like it's basically. I mean, I don't even think it's all wrestling women. It's like it's also some porn stars or some kind of, I don't know. But the idea is that it's just basically videos of them stripping. It's not anything else. Like there's no sex or anything.
Right. To be clear,
it's like it's not like a porn video. It's like it's a striptease video, and they just take off their clothes, and like there might be, I don't know if there might have been like 2 or 3 versions of each one. Like they just stripped out of different clothes, but. That's all it was. Like it wasn't anything.
But it was like a thing to try to, you
right.
know,
it's like these women who you never saw naked
with kind of like softcore music. In
yeah,
the back
right. Exactly. It's like you get some like cheesy
Playboy Channel.
Right. And they're like taking, they're doing like their dancing,
and then Voodoo Child starts.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
for life.
It's weird. I mean, you know, again, you kind of it's no different than, you know, actually kind of being at a strip club where it's like you see it once, it's like, yeah. And then after like 2 more times, you're like, okay, it's weird. I don't want to
if only it was that way watching pro wrestling. I would have had a lot more friends. But, you know, increasingly in the Attitude Era, late 90s, titillation, they were selling more and more of scantily clad women. And
it's a huge era for that.
Totally.
I mean, Girls Gone Wild, you know.
So if you were cycling out of the business like Missy Hyatt.
And the Playboy issues too, like it's the whole same era. Like
the video magazine.
The WWE Playboy issues all the time.
Sure.
It's all that same shit.
So if you're cycling out of that business at the time, there's people making offers. Like if you did a nude shoot, like you could actually continue to monetize your fandom from wrestling.
Right.
But as Missy tells us here in clip 10, it came at a point where she wasn't making all the greatest decisions. And even this one, while she doesn't necessarily regret doing Wrestling Vixens, you can imagine that she didn't end up with a bank account that she expected by the time it was all said and done.
God, of course. Imagine. Here comes more exploitation. Here we go.
Perhaps.
So when you're on like a wild sort of spiral like that,
oh my God, it's horrible.
Jesus, Stu, a little tact.
well, no.
Her reaction is great. Oh my God,
she's such a pro at handling it.
She is.
This is in the context of talking about how Buff ended up on TMZ.
Okay.
And how he was.
Oh, not her.
It's not her.
Sorry, Stu. I rescind the criticism.
So he's asking her,
Stu.
when you get in a position where you're making decisions that are kind of like people are like, oh my God, he's doing that now.
Right.
And then she can relate. That's why she goes into it.
Okay. Here we go.
So when you're on like a wild sort of spiral like that,
oh my God, it's
that,
horrible. You make the worst decisions. I got married like an idiot.
Good for you, Missy. That's amazing.
Amazing. Okay, here we go.
I lost my job as a nurse. Hold
on, pause for a second. What's the nurse thing? What's all that about? I didn't know this.
As a nurse.
No shit. That's it? Like,
that's the
where?
extent of what I know.
We
about
know where?
No. I assume Florida.
All right.
Yeah, but I don't
know.
So
maybe in the early 2000s?
That's
I also don't know when.
You got to work for that kind of a degree. That's a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
So that's incredible. Like I had no clue that she went to nursing school. And
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. People just do things that are not
They
characteristic.
do not. Yeah, you do a lot of stuff that's just not in your right mind. I mean, I did Wrestling Vixens, but I was in my right mind for that. But I probably wouldn't have done it unless I wouldn't have been sober or whatever. But I mean, Tammy and myself, Tammy Sitch, Sonny, and I made our first month like $80,000 doing Vixens.
Wow.
So the money was great, but the money was stolen by our business partners.
Of course. Listen,
we got some money, but we didn't get a lot of it. But I sure, if I would have been in my right mind, I wouldn't have had him as a business partner, and I wouldn't have let him work me and take my money.
Oh,
God damn it!
Starting to detect a theme here.
I'm sorry you didn't get my.
I don't know whose pockets your money ended up in, but it wasn't hers.
Now I'm disturbed even more.
Anybody who's producing that tape, you can't imagine. More likely than not, they're not in the up and up.
That's the thing too. I mean,
fair
if
business
you
practice.
did see the quality of the tape, it wasn't like this masterpiece of cinematography and production design. We're talking about, right? I mean, we're talking, mini DV camera or something. Essentially with they're in front of a backdrop and it's like a bunch of lights and shit just on them. It's like heavily shadowed. There's not like, I mean, like you see shadows in the background. It wasn't pretty. It was just like. It was a titillation factor. Like this is like something that has eluded me, as a fan.
Well, that was the thing.
It's total. Listen, I do not condone my actions about this. Okay, it's.
I just thought you could
bad.
bring a unique perspective. That's all.
Listen. I do what I can.
You know
I
what I
do what I
mean?
can. I try to bring as unique a perspective as possible regarding
that's,
these down and dirty things that I did in my youth.
And I remember hearing about that and being like, "Oh, well, where's Missy Hyatt been?" Like, you know,
Right,
okay,
right.
so she resurfaces through this project, and
Actually, I think you told me about this. Actually,
that
I
the
think you might
existence
have-
of it. I'm
I think
sure
you
did.
told me the one, and then I was like, well, I guess I gotta get this.
I gotta.
I knew it was my fault somehow.
Oh my.
I knew that was coming. But yeah, it's
Just to be clear, this is you guys are talking about 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, we're talking like
Not last week.
2004. No.
Yeah.
This is definitely when we
I
were.
think you
just
bought
at
a DVD.
I know,
Yeah.
right? And by DVD,
2 years ago?
Hey, maybe.
Yeah, this was when.
Well, I'm sure
early
some
2000s was when.
some fans might do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, that could be a vintage purchase these days.
Sure.
But
I'm sure you can get on eBay.
sure you could. So Brutus,
It's still not going in your pocket, Missy. I'm sorry. I wish it was.
it's fascinating to hear her talk about Brutus and her friendship with Brutus, because in the same way that Brutus helped her when she was feeling down about being fired from WCW, she found herself in a position to kind of repay the favor, because Brutus later on in his life, also, as the episode you did on him documents, hit a lot of substance abuse struggles in his own right. And there was a point in time, as Missy tells it, that he was going to lose his beloved house in, I think, Clearwater, Florida, somewhere in Florida.
Also, anthrax scares.
Yeah, well, that came when he moved to Boston and worked for the
God.
subway system. Yes.
Yeah.
While we were in college.
While
we were in college. That was we were actually kind of. I remember when we found out about that, we were kind of like, "What? How do we miss him working at fucking Downtown Crossing?"
Yeah, I know. That would have been a chance
Like
to...
I would have loved to have just gotten a token from him, because
Yeah.
back in the token days.
Oh my
If you wanna
God, that is.
date myself.
But that is like the most maximum depressing post wrestling
Oh,
when you
yeah.
heard that
gig
Yeah.
of all time.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And,
Yeah.
and so it turns out that Missy was one of the shoulders that Brutus leaned on as things were kind of unraveling a bit in his life. And so, as said, she got the chance once again to be a bit of a supportive female role in the business here, to hear her tell it. And here's Missy on Beefcake, looking to her for what to do as some of the trappings of his success in wrestling started to slip through his fingers.
Is this clip 9?
Sorry, yes, this is clip 9.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Do you know Brutus gives you credit for saving his life?
Really?
He says you saved him from opioid addiction.
Oh my gosh, baby, because he saw what happened to me.
She's so awesome.
She
She's
really
so
is. She's a fucking
She's
trip.
an open
God love
book.
her. God love her.
That's amazing. But also,
Oh, you're
Right,
sad,
right,
but-
yeah.
I'm not
Listen,
celebrating
listen,
she went through this.
We're grateful that she's alive and that she's able to share this kind of stuff and is willing to share it, because
No,
that's,
of course.
you know, you can always help somebody else.
Yeah, of course.
Good for her.
That's what probably happened. I guess he took care of me one too many times, because I remember he called me one time, and I was living in New York, and he called me, and because this is back, like I said, in 2001 or whatever, and he's like, I'm selling my house. I have to sell my house. And this is a house that I remember, it was one story on the canal in somewhere in Clearwater, one of those little towns. Who he's the king of. Everybody loves him there. He's like the bear. Anyway, and so he's like, "Will you come down and be with me?" And so I spent the last night in his house with him. We slept on the floor. And I stayed with him that night, to be with him, because if he called me and needed me, I would be there for him.
Oh,
Missy Hyatt.
How did they know each other? Like, they didn't cross paths.
Just Florida, I think.
Just being in Florida?
Both living in
That's
Florida
wild.
wrestling.
operating in
That's
Florida, yeah.
wild,
But they
yeah.
weren't in the company. Missy Hyatt did have a tryout with WWF, but that was very, very short lived. So,
because she would have been there, like, I mean, they would have been fleeting, because
Yes,
when
very
he came
much
in
so.
with Hogan, she was on her way out
yes,
in WCW, and it's just amazing that they have this incredible friendship that that helped them both survive.
it appears
That
way.
I'm just curious, like, how they would have known each other without actually working. I know it's a small circle of people, but
So all the things we saw Missy Hyatt contribute on screen and on the calendar and on the 900 line, turns out there was quite a bit going on behind the scenes as well, that she played a critical role in helping other wrestlers on their journeys in the industry. So that will do it for us this week on Dark Side of the Ring Unheard. Remember, Season 6 resumes on Tuesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Vice, where we take a look at the life of Daphne. And do join us next week for our season finale here on Dark Side of the Ring Unheard. We're going to take a look at the mild-mannered Scott Simpson from Minnesota, who, due to circumstances, found himself becoming the dreaded Russian nightmare Nikolai Volkov.
Nikolai
I had to
Volkov.
pop-
That's what shit.
I did it to pop him.
What?
You'll
What?
get the joke
Yeah,
later.
I get that later. Not the next time.
Nikita Koloff. Nikita Koloff is the subject of our next and last Unheard for this season. Next time. We'll see you then.
See ya.